My son said, "Sign everything, Mom. It'll make things easier for all of us." So I did. I signed every single page. And I smiled. What I did next left them speechless. "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end and tell me where you're watching from." I used to believe family meant something unbreakable. Now, I know better. The morning I signed those papers, the house was quiet in a way it hadn't been before. Not peaceful, not comforting, just empty. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked louder than usual. Each second stretched longer, heavier. I stood in the kitchen for a while, my hand resting on the edge of the counter, staring at the same cup of coffee I hadn't touched. It had gone cold. I didn't notice when. I suppose that happens when you've been thinking too much, or when you've stopped expecting anything warm to last. My name is Margaret Whitmore. I'm 72 years old, and I've lived in the same house in Hartford, Connecticut for over 40 years. Every wall in this place carries a memory. Every creak in the floorboards knows my footsteps. Or at least, it used to. That morning, it felt like the house no longer recognized me. Maybe because I had already made my decision, or maybe because somewhere, deep down, I knew I was about to leave it behind. Not physically, not yet, but in every way that mattered. I heard the front door open just after 9. No knock, no hesitation. Daniel never knocked anymore. "Mom?" His voice echoed down the hallway, casual, like he owned the place. "You ready?" I didn't answer right away. I picked up the coffee cup, took a small sip, and set it back down, still cold. "I'm in the kitchen," I said finally. He walked in a moment later, keys in hand, phone already out, glancing at the screen as if something more important might be waiting for him there. My son, 45 years old, tall, well-dressed, confident. A stranger. "You didn't drink your coffee," he said, barely looking at me. "I forgot," I replied. He nodded, like that made sense. Like everything about this morning made sense. "Clara's waiting in the car," he added. "We should go. Mr. Green doesn't like to be kept waiting." Of course he didn't. Lawyers never do. I wiped my hands on a dish towel that didn't need wiping. A habit, something to do with my hands so they wouldn't tremble. They weren't trembling. Not anymore. "I'll get my coat." Daniel didn't offer to help. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He simply turned and walked back toward the front door, already halfway out of the room before I finished speaking. I watched him go. For a moment, I saw a different boy in his place, a small child standing in this same kitchen, asking me to cut the crust off his sandwiches, laughing when I told him he needed it to grow strong. He used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. Now he couldn't even meet my eyes. Funny how things change. By the time I reached the front door, Clara was already in the passenger seat of their car, her window slightly down despite the chill in the air. She was scrolling through her phone, her perfectly manicured nails tapping lightly against the screen. She didn't look up when I stepped outside. Daniel opened the back door for me. Not out of tameness, out of efficiency. "Careful," he said, as if I might fall. I got in without a word. The ride to the lawyer's office took about 20 minutes. No one spoke much. The radio played softly in the background, some morning talk show, voices laughing about something trivial. It felt inappropriate. At a red light, Clara finally glanced back at me. "You brought your ID, right?" she asked. I met her eyes for a brief moment. "Yes." "And the documents we talked about?" "Yes." She smiled then. Not warmly. Not kindly. just satisfied. Good, she said, turning back around. This will all be over soon. I leaned back against the seat. All be over. That's one way to put it. Mr. Howard Green's office was exactly what you'd expect. Dark wood, leather chairs, shelves lined with books no one reads but everyone respects. He stood when we walked in, offering a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Mrs. Whitmore? He said, extending his hand. It's good to see you again. I shook it. His grip was firm, professional, measured. Thank you for coming in. He continued, please have a seat. Daniel and Clara sat immediately. I took my time. There's something about slowing down that makes people uncomfortable. I've learned that over the years, especially when they're in a hurry to get what they want. Mr. Green gathered a stack of papers from his desk, aligning them carefully before placing them in front of me. These are the documents we discussed. They transfer full ownership of the house and associated assets to your son, Daniel Whitmore. Associated assets. Such a clean way to describe the lifetime. Once signed, he added, the transfer will be immediate. Immediate. No waiting. No reconsidering. No turning back. Daniel leaned forward slightly. It's the best option, Mom, he said. You won't have to worry about maintenance, taxes, any of that stuff anymore. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the way he avoided my gaze. At the way his fingers tapped impatiently against his knee. At the way Clara sat beside him, perfectly still, watching everything with quiet anticipation. They had already decided how this would go. They had already imagined the outcome. All that was left was for me to play my part. So I did. I understand, I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It didn't break. Mr. Green slid a pen across the desk toward me. Take your time, he said. I picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have. Or maybe that was just me. The first page was straightforward. Name, date, signature line. I signed. Daniel exhaled softly beside me. The second page. More legal language. More finality. I signed again. Clara shifted slightly in her seat. I could feel it. That quiet excitement. The third page. The fourth. Each signature came easier than the last. Not because it mattered less, but because I had already made my decision long before I walked into that office. By the time I reached the final page, the room felt different. Lighter. As if something had already been released. I signed my name one last time. Margaret Whitmore. 72 years of living, reduced to ink on paper. I set the pen down carefully. There, I said. Daniel smiled. A real smile this time. Thank you, Mom, he said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I let him. For a moment. Then I gently pulled my hand away. You're welcome, I replied. Mr. Green gathered the documents, tapping them into a neat stack. I'll process these right away. You'll receive confirmation by the end of the day. Clara let out a small breath, almost a laugh. That's perfect. Perfect. Yes. I suppose it was. I stood up slowly, smoothing out the front of my coat. Is there anything else? I asked. Mr. Green hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Then he shook his head. No, that should be everything. I nodded. Good. Daniel was already reaching for the folder, already discussing next steps with Mr. Green. Insurance. Utilities. Renovations. As if the house had already changed hands, as if I were no longer part of it. I walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one asked if I was all right. No one noticed that I didn't look back. And that was fine. Because I had given them exactly what they wanted. Every signature, every page, every illusion of control. I stepped out into the cold afternoon air, pulling my coat tighter around me. For the first time in a long while, I felt clear. Not happy. Not relieved. Just certain. They thought the story ended in that office. They thought the papers in Mr. Green's hands meant they had won. They were wrong. Because the house felt different when I came back. Not because anything had changed. Everything was exactly where I had left it. The coat rack by the door still held Daniel's old baseball cap from years ago, the one he refused to throw away, even after it stopped fitting. The rug in the hallway still had that faint stain from when he spilled orange juice at age 8. The same walls, the same furniture, the same life. And yet, none of it belonged to me anymore. I closed the front door quietly behind me. The latch clicked into place with a soft, final sound. For a moment, I stood there, my hand still resting on the knob, listening. There's a certain kind of silence you only notice when something is ended. It doesn't echo. It settles. I walked into the living room and set my purse down on the small oak table beside the couch. The sunlight was coming through the front windows just as it always did in the early afternoon. Soft, filtered through the lace curtains I'd sewn myself 20 years ago. Dust floated in the light. Slow. Unbothered. I sat down. Not heavily, not dramatically, just sat. Across from me, the framed photograph of my late husband Richard rested on the mantel. He was smiling in that picture. He always smiled in photographs, said life was too short to look serious and something meant to last forever. I studied that smile for a long time. You would have hated this, I said quietly. My voice sounded strange in the room. Too small, too controlled. I reached for the remote and turned on the television, not because I wanted to watch anything, but because silence, after a while, starts to feel like pressure. A news anchor was talking about something distant. Numbers, weather patterns, things that mattered to someone, somewhere. Not here. Not anymore. I muted it. The moving images were enough. Time passed. I'm not sure how much. Minutes, maybe? Maybe more? At some point, I stood and walked into the kitchen again. The same cup of coffee was still sitting on the counter, exactly where I had left it that morning. I picked it up. Still cold? Of course it was. I poured it into the sink and watched the dark liquid swirl down the drain. It disappeared quickly, leaving nothing behind. That's how it goes. Things you think will last, don't. I rinsed the cup, dried it, placed it back in the cabinet. Every movement deliberate, every step quiet. That's when I heard the car. Tires against gravel, doors closing, voices. They didn't wait long before coming inside. Again, no knock. Clara entered first this time, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. Daniel followed behind her, already speaking before he even reached the living room. We should probably change the locks this week, just to be safe. Safe. From what? I wondered. From me? I stayed in the kitchen. I wanted to hear how far they would go when they thought I wasn't listening. Clara's voice was lower, but clear enough. And the guest room, she said, will need to repaint. That color is outdated. Outdated. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. Good. We could open up the wall between the kitchen and dining room, Daniel added. Make it more modern. Modern. I leaned lightly against the counter.
This was happening faster than I expected. Not the decision, the comfort. They had stepped into it so easily, like I had already disappeared. Clara laughed softly. "I've been waiting for this," she said. That was the first honest thing she'd said all day. I stepped into the doorway. They both turned. For a brief moment, there was something in Daniel's eyes. Surprise. Then it was gone. "Oh," he said. "You're back already." "Already?" "Yes," I replied. Clara smiled. That same polished smile. "We were just talking about some improvements," she said. "You know, making the space more functional." I nodded. "Of course." Daniel shifted his weight slightly. "You don't mind, do you?" he asked. I looked around the room. At the cabinets I had chosen. At the table where I had fed him every night for 18 years. At the window where I had stood, waiting for him to come home from school. "No," I said. "I don't mind." And I meant it. That seemed to relax him. "Good," he said. "Because we're thinking of starting soon. Contractors are booking out months in advance." Of course they were. Clara stepped closer, resting her hand lightly on the back of one of the chairs. "And don't worry," she added, her voice softening just enough to sound considerate. "We'll make sure you're comfortable while everything's being done." Comfortable. An interesting word. "I'm sure you will," I said. There was a pause. A small one. The kind people don't notice unless they're listening for it. Daniel cleared his throat. "So, have you thought about where you might stay?" he asked. There it was. Not even a full day. I met his eyes. "Stay?" "Well," he said, glancing briefly at Clara before looking back at me. "With the renovations and everything, it might be easier if you stayed somewhere else for a while." Somewhere else. I let that settle between us. "I see," I said. Clara jumped in quickly. "We found a few really nice senior communities nearby," she said. "They have activities, social events, people your age." People your age. I folded my hands together. "Did you?" I asked. "Yes," she said brightly. "We can go visit them this week if you'd like." This week. Everything was moving quickly now. Faster than grief. Faster than memory. Faster than respect. "That won't be necessary," I said. Daniel frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said calmly, "I've already made arrangements." That caught them off guard. Clara's smile faltered for just a second. "Oh, she has." "Yes." I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. They exchanged a quick glance. A silent conversation. Adjusting. Recalculating. "Where?" he asked. I walked past them into the living room, picking up my purse from the table. "You'll find out soon enough," I said. That wasn't an answer he liked. I could tell. But he didn't press. Not yet. Instead, he nodded slowly. "All right. As long as you're taken care of." Taken care of. I slipped my coat back on. "I always am," I replied. Clara watched me carefully now. More closely than before. As if she was trying to find something she had missed. Something that didn't fit. But she wouldn't find it. Not yet. "Are you going somewhere?" she asked. "Yes." "Where?" I met her eyes. "Just finishing a few things." That was true. Just not in the way she thought. I moved toward the front door again. Daniel stepped aside to let me pass. Polite. Out of habit. Not out of feeling. "Do you need a ride?" he asked. No. I opened the door. The afternoon air felt colder than before. Or maybe I was just more aware of it now. "I'll be back later." Another truth. Just not the one they expected. And then I stepped outside. This time I didn't pause. I didn't look back. Because inside that house they were already making plans. Changing things. Erasing pieces of a life they never built. They thought they were preparing for the future. They thought everything was under control. They thought I had given up. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't see, was that every step they were taking was leading them exactly where I wanted them to go. And soon, very soon, they would hear the one sentence that would stop everything.
I didn't drive far.
just across town. There's a small cafe on Maple Street. It's been there for as long as I can remember. The kind of place that doesn't change much. Same faded sign, same cracked tile near the entrance, same bell above the door that rings just a little too loudly. I chose it because no one I knew ever went there anymore, or maybe because I needed somewhere that didn't belong to my past. The bell rang when I stepped inside. A few people looked up, then looked away. Good. I ordered a cup of black coffee, fresh this time. The girl behind the counter smiled politely, the way people do when they don't know your story and don't need to. Anything else? She asked. No, I said. That was enough. I took a seat near the window, not too close to the glass, just enough to see the street without being seen too clearly myself. Old habit. I wrapped my hands around the cup when it arrived. Warm. Finally. I didn't drink it right away. I just sat there, letting the heat settle into my fingers. Waiting. He was late. Not by much. 5 minutes. Then 10. I didn't check the time. I didn't need to. You learn to measure waiting differently after a certain age. Not in minutes. In breaths. In how long it takes your thoughts to circle the same memory before settling again. The bell rang again. This time I looked up. He stood just inside the door, scanning the room. Mid-50s maybe. Gray at the temples. Coat too heavy for the season. Eyes that moved quickly, but never nervously. He spotted me. Of course he did. He always had a way of noticing things others missed. Margaret? He said as he approached. Thomas. Thomas Hale. I hadn't seen him in nearly 12 years, not since Richard's funeral. He'd stood quietly at the back then, hands folded, saying very little, but when he spoke, people listened. He used to work with Richard. Later, he became something else. Someone who understood paperwork the way a surgeon understands anatomy. Precise. Careful. Unforgiving when necessary. He sat across from me, placing a thin leather folder on the table. You look well, he said. I gave a small nod. So do you. Neither of us meant it as a compliment. It was just acknowledgement. He glanced at the coffee in front of me. Still taking it black? Yes. He didn't order anything. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a social visit. Your call sounded urgent, he said. I studied him for a moment. The lines around his eyes had deepened. Not from age alone. From experience. From things people don't talk about. I signed the papers this morning, I said. He didn't react immediately. That was one of the things I always respected about Thomas. He never wasted a reaction. Did you? He said after a moment. Yes. For the house? And everything attached to it. He leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. That's comprehensive. It is. Another pause. Longer this time. Was that your decision? I took a sip of my coffee. Still warm. Yes. That wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. Thomas tapped the edge of the folder lightly with his finger. I assume you didn't ask me here just to inform me. No. I reached into my purse and pulled out a single envelope. Plain. Unmarked. I placed it on the table between us. I need you to hold on to this, I said. He didn't touch it. Not yet. What is it? He asked. Something they don't know exists. That got his attention. Not in an obvious way. Just a slight shift in his posture. A narrowing of the eyes. And who is they? He asked. My son. And his wife. Thomas nodded slowly. I see. No judgment. No surprise. Just understanding. He reached forward and placed his hand on the envelope, but still didn't open it. Before I take this, he said, I need to understand what I'm stepping into. Of course he did. That's why I came to him. Daniel believes he owns everything now, I said. Because of what you signed? Yes. And does he? I looked at Thomas. Really looked at him. No, I said. That was the first honest answer that mattered. He held my gaze for a moment. Then he opened the envelope. Carefully. Not tearing. Not rushing. Inside was a set of documents. Thinner than the ones from this morning. But far more important. He read the first page silently. Then the second. His expression didn't change much. But I noticed the small things. The way his thumb paused at the edge of the paper. The way his jaw tightened. Just slightly. Margaret? He said quietly. Yes. This was filed? Last week. Before today? Yes. He leaned back again. This time more slowly. They had no idea. No. He let out a soft breath. Not quite a laugh. Not quite disbelief. Of course they didn't, he said. I took another sip of my coffee. It had cooled slightly now. Not cooled yet, but getting there. They were too busy planning, I said. Planning what? I looked out the window for a moment. A car passed by. Someone walking a dog. Life continuing. Unaware. My exit, I said. Thomas nodded once. That sounds about right. He gathered the papers back into the envelope, but didn't seal it. Instead, he placed it inside his folder. You understand what this does? I do. And you're certain? Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. He studied me again. Longer this time. As if he was looking for something. Fear? Regret? Weakness? He wouldn't find any of it. Not anymore. They're going to be blindsided. Yes. And the timing? I set my cup down. Empty now. Soon. How soon? Soon enough that they won't have time to fix it. That seemed to satisfy him. He closed the folder. All right, he said. I'll handle it. I know you will. We sat in silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable. Just complete. Richard would have trusted you with this. I nodded. He did. Thomas stood. I followed. Take care of yourself, Margaret. I intend to. He hesitated. Just slightly. Then, they pushed you into this. I shook my head. No, I said. I walked in on my own. That was important. Very important. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. It was about correction. Balance. Truth. Thomas gave a small nod, then turned and walked toward the door. The bell rang again as he left. I stayed where I was, for a little while longer, watching the space where he had been sitting. Then I stood, put on my coat, and stepped back out into the afternoon. The air felt sharper now, cleaner, like something had shifted. Back at the house, they were probably still talking, making plans, measuring walls, choosing colors, imagining a future built on something they believed was already theirs. They didn't know. Not yet. But they would. And when they did, it wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be dramatic. Just one sentence. Read out loud. In a quiet room. By a man who had seen everything. And still paused.
There are moments, when you look back, that don't feel important at the time. They pass quietly. No raised voices, no slammed doors, just small things, almost invisible. And yet, when you line them up, one after another, they form something else entirely, a pattern. I didn't see it at first, or maybe I chose not to. The first time was about a year after Richard passed. The house was still full back then. Not with people, with absence. His chair at the dining table remained untouched for months. I would set a plate there out of habit, then remove it before sitting down. One evening, Daniel came over for dinner. He used to do that more often in those days. Clara came with him. She brought a bottle of wine. Expensive. Unfamiliar. I thought we could try something different, she said, placing it on the counter. Different. That word again. I nodded. Of course. We sat at the table. I served pot roast, the same recipe Richard had loved for 30 years. The smell filled the house the way it always had. Daniel ate quickly. Clara picked at her plate. Halfway through the meal, Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom," he said, not looking at me, "have you thought about downsizing?" Downsizing. I remember the way the word landed. Soft. Careful. Planned. "This house is a lot for one person," he added. I folded my napkin slowly. "I've managed it so far," I said. Clara smiled. "That's not really the point," she said. "It's just inefficient." I didn't respond. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and brought back the gravy. No one spoke while I poured it. That was the first time. Not an argument, just a suggestion. Another evening, a few months later, Daniel came alone. That was unusual. He walked through the house differently that night. Not like a guest, like someone measuring something. "How much are the property taxes here?" he asked, standing near the window in the living room. I told him. He nodded. "Yeah," he said. "That's high." I didn't ask why he wanted to know. I already understood the shape of the question. Later, I found him in Richard's study, going through the filing cabinet. Not carefully, not respectfully, just looking. "What are you doing?" I asked from the doorway. He turned quickly. "Oh, nothing," he said. "Just trying to find the warranty for the furnace." The furnace. That was in a completely different drawer. I didn't correct him. I simply watched as he closed the cabinet. Too fast. The papers inside shifted. Out of place. That was the second time. Still no confrontation. Just movement. Then there were the smaller things, the kind you almost forget. Clara started referring to the house differently. Not your house. Not even the house. Just this place. This place could use more light. This place feels a little dated. This place has good potential. Potential. I heard that word more than once. It didn't belong to memory. It belonged to plans. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and found Clara in the kitchen. Alone. She had let herself in. Of course she had. She was standing by the counter, flipping through a notebook. My notebook. The one where I kept everything. Appointments. Bills. Account numbers. Important contacts. She looked up when I walked in. "Oh," she said, "I didn't realize you'd be back so soon." I set the grocery bags down. "What are you doing?" I asked. Her smile came quickly. "I was just looking for the plumber's number," she said. "The sink's been making that noise again, right?" The sink hadn't made a noise in months. I nodded anyway. "Did you find it?" "Yes," she said, closing the notebook. She didn't show me where. She didn't ask. She just walked past me. Light, effortless, as if she had done nothing unusual. That was the third time. After that, things became smoother. On the surface. Daniel started calling less. But when he did, the questions were always the same.
Did you pay the property tax yet? Have you looked into selling? Are you keeping up with maintenance? Practical questions. Reasonable questions. Until you realize they're not questions at all. They're assessments. Checkpoints. Measurements. Then came the bank. That was when the pattern began to tighten. I went in one morning to deposit a check. Routine. Familiar. The teller hesitated when she pulled up my account. Just for a second. Then she smiled again. But it wasn't the same smile. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, "have you recently authorized a secondary contact on your account?" I looked at her. "No." She glanced at the screen. "It shows here that your son, Daniel Whitmore, was added as an authorized contact last month." Last month? I hadn't been to the bank last month. I didn't authorize that, I said. She blinked. "Oh," she said, "well, it may have been done through paperwork submitted remotely." Paperwork. Submitted. Remotely. I thanked her and left. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't ask. I went home. I opened my filing cabinet. The papers were not where I had left them. Not exactly. Nothing obvious. Nothing missing. Just shifted. Like someone had gone through them carefully enough to avoid detection, but not carefully enough to leave them untouched. That was when I understood. Not all at once. Not in a single moment. But in layers. Like something slowly coming into focus. They weren't waiting. They were preparing. Every question, every visit, every quiet adjustment. It wasn't concern. It wasn't care. It was positioning. And I had been standing still long enough for them to map everything around me. The final piece came 2 weeks before I signed the papers. Daniel invited me to dinner. Their house. New. Modern. Bright in a way that felt intentional. Clara greeted me at the door. Warm. Too warm. "Margaret, you look wonderful," she said, taking my coat before I could answer. She never called me Margaret before. Dinner was perfect. Too perfect. Every detail arranged. Every word measured. Halfway through the meal, Daniel leaned back in his chair. "We've been thinking." Of course they had. "It might be time to make things simpler," added Clara. Simpler. Another word that sounds kind until you examine it. "What do you mean?" I asked. Daniel smiled. "We just want to help you," he said. "Help?" "Yes," Clara said softly. "Make sure everything is secure." Secure. I looked at them, at the way they sighed together. Aligned. Certain. And in that moment, something settled inside me. Not anger. Not hurt. Clarity. Because I could finally see it. Not as separate moments. Not as isolated concerns. But as a single continuous line. Leading here. To this table. To this conversation. To the papers I would sign. I picked up my glass of water. Took a small sip. Set it back down. I understand. And I did. Completely. What they didn't understand, what they couldn't see, was that by the time they thought they had convinced me, I had already begun to move. Quietly. Carefully. In ways they would never notice. Until it was too late.
The moment it became undeniable didn't arrive with shouting. It didn't come with a confession. It came quietly, like everything else. It was a Tuesday morning. Cold, clear, the kind of morning where the light feels sharp, almost unforgiving. I remember because I had opened the kitchen window just slightly, letting the air in while I stood at the counter sorting through a stack of mail. Bills, advertisements, a handwritten envelope from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years, and one official-looking envelope I didn't recognize. No return address I knew. Just my name, Margaret Whitmore, typed. precise. I opened it last, not because I was avoiding it, just because it felt heavier. Inside was a single sheet of paper, bank letterhead, formal language, the kind that tries to sound neutral while saying something that isn't. I read it once, then again, then a third time. Each word settled more clearly than the last. Notification of account activity review. Routine. Standard. Nothing unusual about that. Until the second paragraph. Recent transfers and authorization requests have been processed under the direction of your designated secondary contact. Secondary contact. I already knew who that was. Daniel. But I hadn't authorized any transfers. Not recently. Not at all. I set the paper down on the counter, flat, careful, like it might move if I didn't. There was a number at the bottom. Customer service. I didn't call it. Not immediately. Instead, I walked to the sink, turned on the water, watched it run. Clear, steady, uninterrupted. I stayed there for a while, long enough for the sound to fill the space. Then I turned it off. Silence returned. I picked up the phone, dialed the number. A recorded voice answered first. Options, selections. Press 1, press 2, press 3. I waited. Finally, a real person. Thank you for calling. How can I assist you today? My voice, when I spoke, was even, controlled. I received a notice regarding recent account activity, I said. I need clarification. Of course, ma'am. May I have your account number? I gave it. There was a pause. Typing. All right, Mrs. Whitmore, the voice said. I see the account. What would you like to know? The transfers, I said. What transfers? Another pause. Longer this time. Let me pull that up for you. More typing. Then, well, she said carefully, there have been several transactions initiated over the past 6 weeks, all authorized through your secondary contact. My hand rested lightly on the edge of the counter. Amounts? I asked. She listed them, one by one. $5,000, $8,200, $3,750. Small enough not to trigger alarms, large enough to matter. Each one dated, each one approved, each one not mine. And the destination? I asked. Another pause. I'm not authorized to disclose that over the phone without additional verification, she said. Of course she wasn't. That's fine, I said. Was I present for any of these authorizations? No, ma'am, she replied. Were they submitted in person? No. They were processed through signed documentation. Signed documentation. I closed my eyes briefly. Can you confirm the signature? I asked. Yes, ma'am. The signature on file was verified. Of course it was. Because the signature on file was mine. Or something close enough. Thank you, I said. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? No. I hung up. Slowly. Deliberately. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't rush. I placed it back in its holder like I had done 1,000 times before. Then I stood there, looking at the paper, at the neat printed lines, at the language that made everything sound acceptable. Routine. Authorized. Processed. I walked to the living room, sat down, folded my hands in my lap. They were steady. Good. Very good. Because this was no longer a question. No longer a suspicion. No longer something I could explain away with concern or misunderstanding. This was deliberate. Careful. Planned. I thought about the filing cabinet, the shifted papers, the notebook in Clara's hands, the questions, the visits, the quiet adjustments, all of it. Not separate anymore. Connected. Every piece aligned. I stood again, walked back to the study, opened the cabinet. This time, I didn't just look. I examined. Every folder, every document, every line. And there it was. Subtle. Almost invisible. A duplicate form. Tucked behind an original. Not identical. Not quite. But close enough. My name. My account. A signature. Slightly off. Slightly rushed. Not mine. But convincing. Very convincing. I touched the paper lightly. Just with my fingertips. As if it might tell me something more. It didn't. It didn't need to. I already knew. I closed the cabinet. Gently. No noise. No reaction. No visible change. Because something inside me had already changed. Not broken. Not shattered. Just shifted. Into something clearer. Colder. More precise. I walked back into the kitchen. Picked up the letter again. Folded it. Placed it in my purse. Then I poured myself another cup of coffee. Fresh. Hot. I took a sip. It burned slightly. Good. That meant I could still feel something. Just not what they expected. I sat at the table. Alone. But not uncertain. Not anymore. Because now I understood exactly what they had done. And more importantly,
I understood exactly what I needed to do next. Not confrontation. Not accusation. That would only give them time. Time to adjust. Time to hide. Time to fix. No. This required something else. Something quieter. Something final. I reached for my phone again. Scrolled through my contacts. Paused for a moment. Then pressed the call button. It rang once. Twice. Then, Thomas Hale. His voice. Calm. Unchanged. It's Margaret, I said. A brief silence. Then, I was wondering when you'd call. Of course he was. I need to see you, I said. When? Today. Another pause. Then, Maple Street. 1 hour. I'll be there. I ended the call. No hesitation. No explanation. Because explanations were no longer necessary. Not for him. Not for me. I finished my coffee. This time, it didn't feel cold. I washed the cup. Dried it. Placed it back in the cabinet. Everything in its place. Everything as it should be. On the surface. Because underneath, everything had already changed. They thought they were taking control. Piece by piece. Quietly. Carefully. But what they didn't realize was that the moment they crossed that line, they stopped being careful. And I started being precise.
I didn't confront them. Not that day, not the next, and not the day after that. Because once you see something clearly, you don't rush. You adjust. You observe. You let people keep talking. That's when they revealed the most. The house felt different again when I returned from seeing Thomas. Not because anything had changed physically, but because now I understood exactly what I was walking into. Daniel was in the living room when I came back. Shoes off, feet up on the coffee table, television on but muted. He looked comfortable, too comfortable, like someone settling into something permanent. "You're back," he said, glancing at me briefly. "Yes." "Where'd you go?" I took off my coat slowly, hanging it on the same hook I'd used for years. "Just out," I said. He nodded, didn't press. That told me something. He wasn't curious anymore. He didn't feel the need to be. Because in his mind, everything important had already been decided. Clara appeared a moment later from the hallway. She had a tape measure in her hand. Of course she did. "We were just checking dimensions," she said lightly, "for the kitchen remodel." I nodded. "Of course you were." She smiled. That same smile, polished, controlled, practiced. "You should see what we're thinking," she added. "It's going to look completely different." Completely different. I stepped past them into the kitchen. Nothing had moved yet. Not really, but I could already see it. Where they imagined walls coming down. Where they imagined space opening up. Where they imagined my life being erased. I opened a drawer, closed it again, not looking for anything, just touching what was still mine, for now. Behind me I could hear them talking, not to me, around me. "Island seating would work better," Clara said. "Yeah, and we could move the sink," Daniel replied. We could. We could. We. I leaned lightly against the counter. They weren't hiding it anymore. Not even pretending. That was useful. Very useful. Because when people stop pretending, they stop being careful, and that's when you can start. That night I made dinner. Not because I needed to, because routine matters. It keeps things steady. Predictable. I cooked enough for 3. Set the table. 3 plates, 3 glasses. Daniel sat without being asked. Clara followed. No conversation at first, just the sound of utensils. Then, "We talked to a contractor today," Daniel said. "Of course they did." "That was fast," I replied. He shrugged. "Had to move quickly." "Of course you did." Clara dabbed her lips with a napkin. "They said we could start as early as next week," she added. "Next week." I nodded. "That's efficient." She smiled. "We thought so." Another pause. Then Daniel looked up. "We'll need you to move out before that," he said.
Just like that. No hesitation, no softening, no delay. I cut a piece of chicken slowly, placed it on my fork, ate it, swallowed. How long? I asked. A few days, he said. Maybe sooner. Sooner. Clara leaned forward slightly. We found a really nice place, she said. Assisted living, but not in a bad way. It's very active. Active. Yes, Daniel added. You'd like it. I took a sip of water. Set the glass down. I won't be needing that, I said. They both looked at me. Just for a moment. Then Clara tilted her head slightly. Oh, she said. I've made other arrangements. Silence. Brief. Measured. Daniel frowned slightly. What kind of arrangements? The question came too quickly. Too sharp. I looked at him. Calm. Even. The kind that don't require your help, I said. That landed. Not heavily, but enough. He leaned back in his chair. Exhaled. All right, he said, as long as you're taken care of. That phrase again. Taken care of. I nodded. I am. Clara didn't speak. But she watched me. More closely now. Carefully. As if trying to understand something she couldn't quite place. Good. Let her wonder. After dinner, I cleared the table. They didn't offer to help. They never did. I washed the dishes slowly, deliberately. Each plate, each glass, each piece returned to its place. Order matters, especially when everything else is shifting. Later that night, I went to the study. Closed the door behind me. Locked it. That was new. I hadn't locked that door in years. I sat at Richard's desk, opened the drawer. Pulled out the original documents, the real ones. Not the copies, not the versions they had touched, the ones they didn't know about. I placed them in front of me, one by one. Reviewed each page, each clause, each condition. No mistakes. No gaps. No room for interpretation. Thomas had done his job well, and I had done mine. I reached for a pen. Not to change anything. Just to underline a single line. One sentence. Simple. Precise. Final. I read it once. Then again. It didn't need to be long. It just needed to be clear. I closed the folder. Placed it back in the drawer. Locked it. Then I sat there for a while. In the quiet, not thinking about what I had lost, not thinking about what they had done. Only thinking about timing. Because timing is everything. Too early. They adjust. Too late. It doesn't matter. But just right. And everything stops. The next morning I woke up early. Earlier than usual. The house was still. Daniel and Clara were still asleep. I made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table. Watched the light come in slowly. Same as always. And yet, not the same. Because now, every step mirrored. Every word. Every silence. I didn't need to fight them. I didn't need to expose them. I didn't need to say anything at all. I just needed to let them continue. Let them believe. Let them build. Let them settle into something that was never truly theirs. And then, at the exact right moment, take it all away. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just completely.
Planning doesn't look the way people think it does. It isn't dramatic. There are no long speeches, no sudden revelations, just quiet decisions, made carefully, repeated consistently, and protected at all costs. The morning after that dinner, I left the house before either of them woke up. No note, no explanation. I didn't need one. By then, they had already stopped asking. The air was colder than the day before. A thin layer of frost still clung to the edges of the lawn, catching the early light. And paused at the front steps for a moment, not to reflect, just to observe. The house looked the same from the outside, still, complete, untouched. That was important. Appearances always are. I got into my car and drove straight to Thomas's office. Not the cafe this time. His office was on the third floor of an older brick building downtown. Narrow hallway, low lighting, a brass plaque by the door with his name etched in clean, deliberate letters. Thomas Hale, Esquire. I knocked once. "Come in," his voice called. He was already seated when I entered, glasses low on his nose, reviewing something on his desk. He didn't look up immediately. "Close the door," he said. I did. He finished the line he was reading, marked something with his pen, then finally looked at me. "You're early," he said. "So are you," I replied. That earned a slight nod. "Sit." I sat. The room was quiet. No unnecessary decorations, just shelves, files, and a desk that had seen more decisions than most people realize. He slid a folder toward me. "I reviewed everything again last night," he said. "There are no gaps." I expected that. I still checked. Of course he did. That's why I was there. I opened the folder. The documents were exactly as I had left them. Structured, layered, precise. Not just a will, not just a transfer. Something else. "You understand how this plays out," he said. "I do. They'll think the transfer yesterday was final." "Yes. And legally, on the surface, it is." I looked at him. On the surface. He leaned back slightly. "That's the part that matters," he said. "Because what you've done doesn't contradict that. No, it redefines it." "Exactly." I closed the folder. "They won't see it coming," I said. "No," he agreed. "They won't." He reached into his drawer and pulled out another set of papers. "These need to be signed as well," he said. I didn't ask what they were. I already knew the structure. Redundancy, protection, finalization. I signed where he indicated. No hesitation. No questions. Each signature placed exactly where it needed to be. When I finished, he gathered the papers and aligned them carefully. "There's one more thing," he said. I waited. "The timing," he continued. "You'll need to let them proceed. Let them act on what they believe." "I will." "Renovations, changes, financial decisions." "Yes." "The deeper they go," he paused slightly, "the less they can undo." I nodded. "That's the point." He studied me for a moment. Longer than before. "You're very calm about this," he said. "I'm very certain," I replied. "There's a difference." He seemed to accept that. "Good," he said. "Because once this is triggered, there's no reversal. I'm not looking for one." Another pause. Then, "I'll coordinate with Green," he said. "That name again." "Mr. Green, the one who had overseen the sighting yesterday." "He doesn't know?" I asked. "Not yet. He will." "Yes. At the right time." "Exactly. That was the key. Not just what, not just how, but when." I stood. "So we wait," I said. He shook his head slightly. "No. You let them move." A small distinction, but an important one. I picked up my purse. "Same difference," I said. "Not quite," he replied. I paused at the door. "Margaret," he added. I turned. "They're going to react," he said, "when this happens." "I know. They may try to negotiate. They won't have anything to offer."
They may try to argue. It won't matter. They may try to blame you. I met his eyes. They already do, I said. That ended that. I left the office without another word. The hallway felt narrower on the way out. Or maybe I was just more focused. Back in the car. I didn't start the engine right away. I sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead, not thinking about them, not thinking about the house, just reviewing every step, every detail. Nothing missed, nothing rushed. That's how you control something like this. Not with force, with precision. When I returned home, they were already awake. Of course they were. The energy in the house had changed. Faster, louder, boxes in the hallway, measuring tape still on the counter, a stack of brochures on the table, assisted living, senior communities, smiling faces, carefully curated. Clara was on the phone. Yes, next week would be perfect, she was saying. We're ready to move forward. Ready. Daniel was in the dining room, laptop open, scrolling through something. Budgets, estimates, numbers. He barely looked up when I entered. Hey, he said. Hello. Clara ended her call. Good news. We're moving ahead. I nodded. That was quick. We didn't want to lose the slot, she replied. Of course not. Daniel turned the laptop slightly toward me. Take a look. This is what we're thinking. I stepped closer. Looked. Open concept. Modern finishes. New floors. No trace of what had been there before. It's very different, I said. That's the idea, Clara replied. I smiled slightly. I'm sure it is. Daniel leaned back. We'll need access to all the accounts. To manage the payments. There it was. Direct. No hesitation. I've already handled that, I said. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? It means, I said calmly. Everything is already arranged. Clara's eyes narrowed just a fraction. Arranged how? She asked. I met her gaze. You'll see. That was enough. For now. They didn't press further. Not because they weren't curious. Because they believed they were still in control. And that belief, that confidence, that certainty, was exactly what I needed. I moved past them, back into the kitchen, picked up a dish towel, wiped a clean surface. Unnecessary. Routine. Grounding. Behind me they continued talking. Planning. Deciding. Building something that was already beginning to collapse. They just didn't know it yet. But they would. Soon. Very soon. Because everything was in place now. Every document. Every condition. Every line exactly where it needed to be. All that remained was the moment. The one sentence. The pause. And the silence that would follow.
Acting weak is not about lying. It's about removing resistance. Letting people lean forward, just enough to lose their balance. The next few days, I gave them exactly what they expected. Nothing more, nothing less. I moved slower, not dramatically, just noticeably. I paused before answering simple questions. I repeated things they had already said. I let my hand rest on the back of a chair a second longer than necessary before sitting down. Small things, easy to overlook, unless you were looking for them. And Clara was. Always. You look tired, she said one morning, watching me as I poured coffee. I didn't sleep well, I replied. That part was true. Not because of worry, because of timing. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on me a second too long. Measuring. Adjusting. Good. Let her. Daniel noticed less. He always had. Mom, you should probably take it easy, he said later that day. No need to stress about any of this. Any of this. I sat at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a warm mug. I suppose not, I said. He seemed satisfied with that. Of course he did. He wanted me to step back, to disengage, to become manageable. So I did. Or at least I made it look that way. They started taking over small things first. Mail. Daniel picked it up from the box without asking, sorted it, placed only what he thought mattered on the table. The rest disappeared. Clara reorganized the pantry. Labels turned outward. Shelves rearranged. Items moved. I thought this would make things easier for you, she said. Easier. Yes, I replied. I'm sure it will. I didn't move anything back. I didn't question it. That was important. You don't interrupt momentum. You guide it. The contractor came 2 days later. Tall man, clipboard, efficient. He walked through the house with Daniel and Clara, discussing measurements, timelines, materials. I followed behind them quietly, not participating, just present. This wall will come down, he said, gesturing toward the kitchen. That'll open everything up. Open. Clara smiled. That's exactly what we want. Daniel nodded. Yeah, something more current. Current. I stood near the doorway, hands folded, silent. What about you, Mrs. Whitmore? The contractor asked politely. Any preferences? Daniel answered before I could. She's leaving before we start, he said. The contractor looked at me, waiting. I met her eyes. No preferences, I said. He nodded, moved on. That's how easily it happens. You become background, not removed, just reduced. That afternoon, Clara brought in boxes, cardboard, folded neatly, stacked in the hallway. We thought we'd get a head start on your things. Your things. I looked at the boxes, then at her. That's very thoughtful, I said. She smiled, satisfied. They started with the guest room, then the hallway closet, not the master bedroom, not yet. Even they understood that line, but it wouldn't hold for long. I helped, just enough, folding clothes, placing items carefully into boxes, not because I needed to, because it completed the picture, the one they were building in their minds. She's cooperating. She understands. She's letting go. That's what they needed to believe, so I gave it to them. At one point, Clara held up an old sweater, faded, worn. This can probably go, she said. I looked at it, recognized it immediately. Richard had given it to me one winter, years ago. I took it from her, folded it neatly, placed it in the box. Yes, I said, it can. Clara watched me closely, waiting for something. A reaction, a hesitation. She didn't get one, because I didn't give it. That's the thing about control. It's not about what you feel. It's about what you show. That evening, Daniel sat across from me at the table, laptop open again. Numbers. Always numbers. I've been looking at the accounts. He always had. There are a few things we'll need to adjust, he added. Adjust. I've already made the necessary arrangements, I said. He paused, looked up. What kind of arrangements? The same question. Different day. Same answer. The kind that keep everything simple, I said. Simple. He frowned slightly. Didn't understand. Didn't need to. Not yet. Okay, he said finally. As long as it's handled. It is. Clara entered the room then, holding a brochure. This place has availability next week, she said, handing it to me. It's really quite nice. I took it, looked at the pictures. Bright rooms, smiling residents, carefully staged comfort. It looks lovely, I said. She watched my face, searching, always searching. Would you like to go see it? She asked. I closed the brochure, placed it on the table. No, I said. Why not? I met her eyes. Because I won't be needing it. That again, a small crack. Not enough to break anything, just enough to shift her attention. Daniel leaned back in his chair. You keep saying that, he said, but you haven't told us what you're planning. I folded my hands, calm, even. There's nothing to tell, I said. That wasn't entirely true, but it was enough. He studied me for a moment, then shook his head slightly. All right, he said, if you're sure. I am. And I was, more than ever. That night I packed a box myself, not because I needed to, because I wanted to choose. What stayed, what moved, what mattered. I took my time. Each item placed exactly where I wanted it. No rush, no hesitation. In the hallway I could hear them talking, quietly, but not quietly enough. Something's off, Clara said. I paused, listened. How? Daniel asked. She's too calm, Clara replied. A small smile touched the corner of my mouth. Yes, I was. She's just accepting it, Daniel said. I don't think so, Clara said. Silence. Then, what do you mean? He asked. I don't know, she admitted. But it doesn't feel right. Good. Very good. Because doubt is the first crack, and cracks spread. But only if you apply pressure. And I wasn't done yet. I closed the box, sealed it, set it aside. Then I turned off the light and stepped into the hallway. They both looked up. Conversation stopped. What is it? Daniel asked. Nothing, I said. Just like that. Nothing. I walked past them, calm,
measured, untouchable. Because everything they needed to believe, I had already given them. And everything they feared, they hadn't even begun to understand.
The room was quiet when we walked in. Not empty, just controlled. That kind of quiet you only find in places where decisions are made that can't be undone. Mr. Green was already there, seated behind his desk. The same desk, the same arrangement of papers, the same careful alignment. Nothing had changed. Except now, everything mattered. Daniel walked in first, confident, relaxed, already smiling. Clara followed just behind him, her posture straight, her expression composed but alert. She carried that same quiet anticipation I had seen building over the past few days. Expectation. That's what filled the room. I entered last, closed the door behind me, softly. No one spoke at first. Mr. Green looked up. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, nodding politely. "Mr. Green." "Please," he gestured. "Have a seat." Daniel and Clara sat immediately. I took my time, pulled out the chair, lowered myself slowly, hands folded in my lap, still, steady. Mr. Green adjusted his glasses and looked down at the documents in front of him. "We are here to formally review and finalize the transfer documentation executed earlier this week," he said. Formal, neutral, measured, exactly as it should be. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Right," he said. "We just want to make sure everything's in order." "Everything." Clara nodded. "Yes," she added, "just to confirm the details." "Confirm." That word again. Mr. Green gave a small nod. "Of course," he said. "I'll go through the relevant sections." He picked up the first document, the one they had already seen, the one they believed was the only one that mattered. He began reading. Legal language. Precise. Structured. Ownership. Transfer. Authority. Daniel sat back slightly, satisfied. Clara's lips curved into a small, controlled smile. They weren't listening anymore. Not really. They didn't need to. In their minds, this was already finished. Mr. Green turned the page. Continued. More language. More confirmation. Everything exactly as they expected. Everything exactly as I had given them. Then, he reached the next section. A separate document. Thinner. Different. He paused. Just for a second. His eyes moved across the page. Once. Then again. Slower. The room shifted. Not visibly, but I felt it. That small change in air. Daniel noticed it too. "What is it?" he asked. Mr. Green didn't answer immediately. He adjusted his glasses again, looked closer, read the line one more time, carefully, precisely. Then, he stopped. Completely. Silence. Clara leaned forward. "What's wrong?" she asked. Mr. Green looked up. Not at them. At me. Just for a moment. A question. A confirmation. I gave the slightest nod. That was enough. He looked back down at the page and read. Out loud. Slowly. Clearly. Every word exactly where it needed to be. All previously executed transfers of property and associated assets are rendered conditional upon compliance with Clause 7B, which supersedes prior agreements in the event of unauthorized financial activity conducted under misrepresentation or falsified authorization. He paused. The words settled into the room. Heavy. Unavoidable. Daniel blinked. "What does that mean?" he asked. Mr. Green continued. "Upon verification of such activity, all rights of ownership revert immediately and irrevocably to the original grantor, with all involved parties subject to disqualification from any current or future claims." Silence. Complete. Clara's expression didn't change at first. Then, it did. Subtle, but unmistakable. What is this?" she said. Mr. Green turned another page. "There's supporting documentation, filed prior to the transfer. Verified." Daniel sat forward now. "No," he said. We didn't." He stopped. Because he knew. Or at least, he understood enough. Mr. Green continued, his tone unchanged. "Unauthorized transfers were identified within the account associated with Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "Documentation indicates these were conducted under falsified authorization." Clara shook her head. "That's not true," she said quickly. "There must be some kind of mistake. Mr. Green didn't look at her. He didn't need to. The signatures were examined, he said. They do not match Mrs. Whitmore's verified records. Daniel's face had gone pale. He looked at me. Finally. Really looked. Mom, what is this? I met his gaze. Calm. Even. This, I said, is the part you didn't read. Clara stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous, she said. You can't just... I didn't, I replied. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You did. That stopped her. Just for a moment. Mr. Green placed the document down. Carefully. As it stands, he said. The conditions outlined in Clause 7B have been met. Daniel shook his head. No. No, that's not. We signed everything. Yes, Mr. Green said. You did. Another pause. Then, under those conditions, the room felt smaller now. Tighter. Clara's hands were clenched at her sides. This is manipulation, she said. This is... It's documentation, Mr. corrected. Simple. Final. Daniel looked back at me. Desperate now. You knew. I didn't answer. Because the answer was already in front of him. In every line. Every clause. Every signature. You set this up. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said. I responded. That was the truth. The only truth that mattered. Clara laughed then. Sharp. Unsteady. This is an emperor, she said. Mr. Green closed the folder. It is. Quiet. Definitive. Daniel sank back into his chair. All the certainty gone. All the control. Gone. What happens now? He looked at him. Ownership reverts immediately, he said. All claims are void. Clara's voice dropped. Barely above a whisper. We get nothing? I stood. Slowly. Adjusted my coat. Smut the front. No rush. No hesitation. That's not true, I said. They both looked at me. Waiting. For something. Anything. I met their eyes. One after the other. You got exactly what you wanted, I said. A pause. Long enough for it to settle. Then, just not what you expected. Silence. I turned toward the door. No one stopped me. No one spoke. Because there was nothing left to say. I opened the door. Stepped out into the hallway. And this time, I didn't feel the need to look back. Because everything that mattered had already been said. Not by me, but by a single sentence. Read at exactly the right moment.